Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Signals from Pittsburgh. This is Mr. Wills.
And this is Brittany.
And today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite horror films of all time. Probably is my favorite horror series of all time. And celebrating its 40th anniversary, we're talking about the original Evil Dead. Now, this is the first episode in a series of 4 episodes we're going to do called 4 for 40, Reliving the Evil Dead. The upcoming anniversary is the anniversary of the first film, which was released in America on October 15th, 1981. Budget of $375,000, and it scooped up $2.7 million, or $29.4 million adjusted for inflation. So it did pretty good for a little independent movie. Made from a couple of jokers out of the Detroit area. You've got legendary filmmaker by now, creator of the first Spider-Man films, and he's done Drag Me to Hell, Dark Man. He's going to be doing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Of course, I'm talking about Sam Raimi, produced by childhood high school friend Rob Tappert, who they went on to work together with the Ash vs. Evil Dead show and future movies. They also created Hercules and Xena together, so they've been lifelong friends. And then Rob Tappert actually ended up marrying Lucy Lawless. We'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about Ash vs. Evil Dead in one of our later episodes. And of course, you can't forget the legendary Chin, Bruce Campbell, who stars as Ashley J. Williams. This is his very first appearance theatrically as Ashley J. Williams. Before this, they did a short film, which we're going to talk about today, called Within the Woods, which was kind of the precursor to The Evil Dead. So that being said, let's get down to it. Brittany, how did you first come into The Evil Dead? How did you first see it? What did you think when you initially saw it, or what were your impressions of Evil Dead?
So this will be weird because I don't I don't remember the first time I saw it, and I don't remember what I thought of it, and that's not very exciting.
All right, folks, that's it.
That's it. That's a wrap. No, okay, so I had seen the, I almost said album covers, the VHS covers in my local video store. And I feel like I'd tell the same story for everything we talk about. But walking around my Video King, and I was a little too young to see the movie. So I just remember seeing the cover art on the boxes. And I always really liked the OG Evil Dead, with the girl popping up and the hand coming out of the ground. I was always kind of mesmerized by that. I always wanted to watch it, but it was pretty obvious that it was too scary for me at the time. I also remember seeing Evil Dead 2, the cover with the skull with the human eyeballs. So every time I went to the video store, I always wanted to rent. And I don't think we ever did, actually. This is one of those movies that I don't think I ever saw with my dad. I didn't see it till I was in college. And like I said, I don't know, maybe that explains why I can't remember my first impressions of it. I was in college. Who knows what state I was in when I saw the first one. But I know that I watched it with my roommate because he's a big fan as well. So first time I saw him, don't really remember. Second time I saw them, I remember a lot more from them. And the biggest parts that stuck out to me was all of Cheryl's parts, because I related most to her. Because she just from the beginning knows everything's weird and off. And, even in the car, she's just like, oh, you haven't even seen this place yet? That sounds like me. Even at a young age, I was concerned with that stuff. But
So you were the know-it-all kid sister, is what you're saying?
I was, yeah. I related to her. That's exactly who I was.
Well, she gets possessed first, so there you go. Yeah. That proves what happens to you if you're the know-it-all kid sister.
Oh, no. I knew it. No. So, yeah, the first time I remember watching it, Cheryl's parts stuck out to me the most. Like her turning around from the window all of a sudden and revealing that she's possessed, and just kind of being locked in the basement for the first half of the movie, cheering everybody on from the crack in the basement door.
Were you ever locked into the basement on crack?
I wasn't.
Oh,
Not yet. There's still time.
There's something to build up to, I suppose.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Well, maybe you were high the first time you saw it because, and that would have been, that would have been in tune with what was going on in the set because in an interview, Bruce Campbell has stated many interviews that the entire cast was high during the making of this film. He said it helped bring out the surrealness, but I think they just, because he said he never got high until the time they went to Tennessee to shoot The Evil Dead, which that's where it's shot. I think it's supposed to take place in Michigan, but they shot Michigan for Tennessee because they were going to shoot in the fall and they didn't want it to be too cold in Michigan. And then that year, 1981, I think it was 1980 when they shot it. It was the coldest snap in Tennessee that they've ever had.
Oh,
so
really?
It was actually, I think it was actually warmer in Michigan than it was on set in Tennessee, which I find hilarious.
So they had to keep warm and cozy with some smokes.
Yeah, well, we'll go with that. So you said you were drawn to the cover. What was the first cover that you said the theatrical poster cover? Because there's been about 1,000 different covers for the Evil Dead home video release. I just want to get into that.
I saw Evil Dead 2's cover first.
With the skull eyes.
Yeah, that's the first one I saw because that one really struck me. He was looking at me. He was calling me out. But then of course, being on the video shelf, the first Evil Dead was next to it. So when I eventually walked over to inquire, that's when I saw the other covers.
And it seems like it's been released 1,000 fucking times. And I love it. I'll buy every one because it's one of my favorite movies. I think as it got more popular and became more of a cult film, they just kept re-releasing it. I don't even have all the covers. I have a lot of them, but Evil Dead 1 with the original, the HBO Canon video cover has a take on the original theatrical release. And then they did, I think later on, they did a new photo shoot. There's a set, it's an obvious set where Bruce Campbell is standing in outside of what's supposed to be the cabin, but it clearly looks like a backdrop on a photo shoot. And there's a few different ones. There's him on the backdrop, and then there's one with some indiscriminate woman, he's holding on to her, and there's one where she's standing behind him with the chainsaw. Yeah, they did a series of 3 or 4 covers, I believe, that they shot it looked like the late 90s or mid to late 90s, where they kind of redid original artwork, but with a new photo or with multiple photos, which I thought was kind of weird because you can tell Bruce Campbell does not look the same as he does in the movie. He looks a little bit older, still looking good.
Yeah,
but he doesn't look like the fresh-faced Ash Williams that we see in the movie.
Exactly. Yeah, and his hair is different. He cut it a little bit, and this makes me regret not taking more advantage of those blockbuster video rental places going out of business when they would just sell all of their tapes with the covers and everything. I wish I would have picked up all these movies,
Yeah, I have a few of them. I don't think I have every single home video release of Evil Dead 1 on VHS tape, but I do have a few of them. I'm always collecting them, so if anybody out there has any, hit me up on Facebook or hit me up on the Signals from Pittsburgh Facebook. Anything Evil Dead I'm always interested in, as it is my favorite horror series. That being said, we're not going to do a by the numbers, go over the plot like everybody does. This is just going to be our love letter to Evil Dead 1 and Within the Woods, which I abstained from watching until recently. I had seen scenes from it, but Brittany and I recently watched Within the Woods together, which I had set up before. It was kind of the proto Evil Dead. Kind of to get things rolling, it starred Bruce Campbell again, and it had Scott Spiegel, who played Scotty, who is not who plays Scotty in the original film, but Scott Spiegel went on to help with Evil Dead 2, help write it, and he's gone on and actually directed one of his own movies, which I like a lot, called Intruder, that had Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell had a glorified cameo at the end. So if you haven't seen Intruder, check that out. But Within the Woods, I would like to get into that. Brittany, what was your I kind of liked abstaining and watching it with you because we kind of discovered it together. What was your first thoughts on that?
My first thoughts are actually asking why you abstained from watching it for so long. I would think that's something you would have seen a long time ago.
So I did abstain from watching Within the Woods because it was supposed to come out on an official Blu-ray release of Evil Dead, and I think that one of the actresses, I think it was the girl that played Shelley in Within the Woods, Mary Valenti, I think is how you say her name. I think this is an urban legend, so I may be speaking out of turn here, but I think she held like not Bruce Campbell, but Sam Raimi up for more money. And that's why they could never officially release it. I'm relatively sure there's a good, high-quality version that was converted, but never actually released. Because the version we watched was just some VHS rip, I believe, or actually, they shot it on, I believe, 16 millimeter. Yeah. And yeah, they shot on 16 millimeter and blew it up to 35. So that's why I tried to hold off to see the best presentation of it. And it kept saying, oh, it's going to come out on this release. And then no. And then it's going to come out on this release. And then no. So I just, finally thought, we're doing this episode. You've not seen it. I hadn't seen it. So, and I loved it. What did you think of it?
Yeah, it was really good. I ended up getting sucked into it a lot more than I expected, especially considering how you can't really see what's going on a lot of the time just because of the quality of the one that we were able to watch. But can't fault them for that too much. I really liked it. I ended up getting really sucked into it by the end of it. There's a couple shots that were really good, which we were talking about before. The cinematographer, Tim Philo, you could tell that he had some interesting ideas, even with this little short that they were just screwing around with for their first little movie. And I think my favorite shot in the thing was when I think it's Shelley that's coming back up from the basement with the gun. And he shoots a scene of her like walking up the basement stairs, but from underneath the stairs, tilted back. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's not something you expect to see in a little, crappy little indie film. I mean, we're watching it now, kind of knowing where Sam Raimi and everybody went later, but I'm sure it was pretty impressive at the time. I mean, it did help them get their funding for the next big thing. So.
Yeah, it finally did. He actually arranged it to be screened before Rocky Horror Picture Show, I believe. He had known a local theater manager in the Detroit area, and that's how they got buzz. And essentially, that's how they funded Evil Dead. They were, pretty much by hook or crook going out and, shopping this thing around and DIY, and that's what's great about Sam Raimi, even like you mentioned, even though he wasn't a quote unquote refined filmmaker at that time. I mean, he had been making short films with Bruce Campbell for years at this point, and all these people, they grew up together and just kind of dicked around. But this was one of his first serious attempts, and his serious attempt to make a horror film. And you can tell, like you said, a lot of interesting shots. One of my favorite shots was one that they reused in the first Evil Dead, is at the end where Scotty turns into a demon and he sits up, and it's a it's a rack focus shot of Scotty in the front, and then you can see Shelley in the background, which I thought was really cool. And then you just see him sit up really quick. It's really creepy, almost like the Undertaker sit up. Maybe I wonder if Undertaker watched this and then stole it from Evil Dead.
He must have.
Maybe he could have seen. He could have lifted it off Evil Dead. The timeline lines up.
Yeah, that's our theory.
Yeah, that's our theory.
Yeah.
In this version, there's no, like I said, we're not going to go over the entire plot of the movie, but just kind of things we like. But in this version, there's no Kandarian demons. It's Native Americans, ancient Indian burial ground, which very similar to Poltergeist, but this was before Poltergeist. But I like the one scene that is exclusive to this short film is where they go hang out in the woods, and I guess they go hook up in the woods. You don't see it, unfortunately. But so initially Ash says, oh, we shouldn't desecrate Native American burial ground because that could have disastrous results. I'm paraphrasing here. And then he, at the same tomb, he like digs up some ground and finds like a tool that an ancient Native American doctor, I believe, was buried with, and starts fucking with everything.
Immediately.
Immediately after he said not to do that. So it's like it shows you even in his early inception, Ashley.
Ashley, it's fitting, huh?
It is fitting. But I like the scene they're napping and all of a sudden you see like fire just rise up out of the ground. Like it was really cool. And then it was shot low angle, so it just kind of looked like it exploded right into the lens. So like you said, very innovative shots from Sam Raimi and Tim Philo in this quote unquote student film, independent film.
Okay, so I found this one scene like kind of funny, even though it's probably not supposed to be. But it's when Ellen's like freaking out. She's got herself all psyched up. And Scotty went out to go do something, went out to go look for Ash in the picnic baskets. And of course, Ellen psychs herself up. She's like waiting by the door. She thinks Ash Demon's coming back in. And then, of course, it's your friend Scotty, right? That's classic. So opens the door, stabs Scotty. And she like feels all bad about it, obviously. And Scotty's just suffering. He's like laying around in the doorway. She's trying to help him. And then the moment like the demon comes back, she's like, screw you, Scotty. I gotta shut the door now. And she just starts slamming the door. And Scotty's like caught in between the door and he's just going like, ow, oh, oh. And I just found it so funny that she like completely abandons him right away, which honestly, maybe I might do in a demon situation.
After you stabbed a guy.
Oh yeah. Poor Scotty. But I found it kind of funny. And then she like falls on him at one point and he's just like, ow, because she like falls on his chest where the stab wound is. And I don't know. The whole interaction, I found it kind of funny. Sorry, Scotty.
Poor Scotty, always getting jobbed out in these films. And like I said, in this film, he's played by Scott Spiegel, which is cool because Scott Spiegel was a producer on Evil Dead 2. And actually, that scene is brought back in Evil Dead 2 in a way, but we'll go into that a little into our Evil Dead 2 episode. But I liked how they brought things back spiritually. So you can tell not only this is a spiritual precursor to Evil Dead 1, but also things that would show up in the later films, like possessed Ash, who you would see in Evil Dead 2, like a dagger, not necessarily. I mean, you see the dagger in part 1 as well, but there's all kinds of little nods and shots that I think he just earmarked from this little short film that he ended up throwing in all 3 of the movies, even if it's just stylistically. But that's what I really dug about this.
Humble beginnings.
Yeah, but I thought it was cool. I thought the special effects by Tom Sullivan were super great. Yeah. I actually asked Tom Sullivan if he wanted to come on. He respectfully declined because he said he is retired from show business. But
tell him, don't worry, we're not very popular. No, I'm just kidding.
I said, I said, we're not in show business. We're in podcasting business. No, he was very kind. And he said he'd listen to the episodes when we were done with them. But I thought I'd throw that out there that we did attempt to get Tom Sullivan. For those of you who don't know, he was the one that did all the special effects on Evil Dead 1 and Within the Woods. And he did a little bit of work on Evil Dead 2. He created the Necronomicon. He did the inside pages. He did all the cool, visceral, bloody things that get splashed on Ashley J. Williams in the Evil Dead. So that being said, I would recommend Within the Woods. I hope we get an official release at some point. I hope that they get their shit together and somebody just signs off on it and we can do it.
I hope so.
I don't know. It says it was shot for $1,600. So shit for $1,600. That's Robert Rodriguez style of filmmaking there. But even before Robert Rodriguez, so Sam Raimi led the way.
And considering that there's obviously a better cut out there somewhere, like I'm sure it looks a lot better. And I'm sure I'd be even more impressed to see the cleaned up cut for $1,600. So yeah.
And Alan Samwise and Bruce Campbell would go on to be in Evil Dead, which we'll transition into now. So Ashley Williams is actually not his name in this. It's Bruce, but I will always call him Ash. But it's clearly Ash.
He just didn't know it yet.
We just didn't know it yet. But it was clearly, he will always be Ash to me. Getting into back into the Evil Dead 1, what are some of your favorite scenes from that one?
Well, I'll just say in general, the movie doesn't really like screw around, if you know what I mean. Like a lot of other movies at the time did, where like you have the first act, there's maybe like a hint or two of weirdness before things go to shit. I would say this is eerie right from the beginning. But then the first like 30 seconds, you have weird sounds, weird camera angles. It's just eerie straight from the beginning. You know, there's not a lot of like wishy-washy, like, is it going to be weird or isn't it? Like, you just know. It's straight up eerie right away. So that's definitely noticeable. And I like that because I kind of like getting to the point sometimes. I really like, there's two scenes I really like. And, well, I don't know. The whole thing's good. But I like the eye flirting scene. I thought that was really unique. And I don't know if he kind of drew from like other movies, classic movies I haven't seen or something. But I really like the eye flirting scene.
Between Linda and Ash?
Yeah, between Linda and Ash before he gives her like the little necklace. I just think it's like really well done. And it's also kind of strange because like the whole style up into that point, it just kind of changes style to be very flirty and playful, you know, before getting into the rest of the movie. But it's weird. I feel like it shouldn't fit, but it does fit. And it shows like just kind of a sweet, silly side between those two characters before everything goes to hell. So I think that was really well done. And then the other one is probably overlooked a bit, but it's when Cheryl convinces Ash to like drive to town and they go back towards the bridge and the bridge is washed out and all busted up. But he stops the car and gets out and the headlights are on and he walks in front of the car and it's just a silhouette of him. But the car is like on a level balance, if you know what I mean. Like it just looks level. But when he walks in front of the car, it looks like he's walking sideways in front of it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really strange because it's not like a Dutch angle. It's like a Dutch actor. You know? Because you can see that the car is on a level playing field, you could say. But like he's not when he walks away. He's like walking at an angle. But it looks really cool. And it's such a small little thing, but it like keeps with the eeriness of everything, I think. Because it's just, it doesn't feel right when you look at it. But I just thought that was really cool. And then Cheryl gets out and the same thing with her. And I just really thought that was neat. And I don't know if they did anything special to get that look or if they're just kind of walking on they just parked in a good place and they were walking on like an angle when they walked out of the car. But I think it's super effective and really cool and really makes you feel like they're doomed.
Yeah, it does build this sense. That's great juxtaposition to what we were saying before. With the eye flirting scene, I think they have to build up very quickly because of how smash mouth this movie is, that you care about these characters. So you have to have that intense cuteness to be paid off, you know, in the torture and destruction of 4 people's souls and poor Ash, who has to endure not only the demonic possession of his friends, but killing them and getting splashed in the face. Yeah, killing all of them, including his sister and his girlfriend, and enduring, you know, the viscera that is splashed all over him.
So there's another thing I gotta say really quick is Ash is kind of a baby. Like all the way up until near the end, he's kind of a baby. He's just, you know, you would, if you didn't know he's like the main macho man of everything at this point, you probably wouldn't think he'd be the final boy. Because he's just kind of like scared the whole time. Scotty kind of takes the lead for a lot of the movie, like dealing with stuff. Ash just kind of is in the background, not looking like he doesn't know what to do with himself, you know, which I don't blame him, but it's just kind of funny looking back on it, knowing where the series went, to see him being kind of a wimp until, you know, he hits a peak and has to man up and do what he needs to do.
Yes, Ash was just kind of the asshole, you know, lover boy who was very milquetoast and just there with his blue shirt and his khaki pants. And Scotty, like you said, was more the man's man. I mean, he does have a few moments of, you know, funniness. We see that budding in this film. Like I said, Bruce Campbell, instead of playing Bruce, now he's the iconic Ash. And Ellen Sandweiss is back as Cheryl this time, which is his sister. So I thought that was kind of weird. Now they were lovers in the first movie, and now they're brother and sister. So
maybe they were brother and sister all along.
It was very Game of Thrones-esque, but hey, you know, Sam Raimi was way ahead of his time. He knew all about the incestual love triangles that would become popular in modern pop culture. So once again, not only ahead of his time with shots and production and, indie filmmaking, but he was also ahead of his time with taboo love triangles.
Oh yeah. So I was just thinking, this movie has no right to look and feel as good as it is. I always forget it was filmed in 1980. It just does not seem like it. It's so good, especially once you get going. It's just like some of the shots in it are just like way beyond what I feel like this movie has any right to be. It's just, and it's so good. And obviously it became really popular for a reason, and it got the attention that it deserved and everything. But it blows me away every time I rewatch it. I always forget how good it is.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are many things that we take for granted. For one of them being, they didn't have steady cams back then. So it was literally Sam Raimi, putting the camera on a stick or putting two people, on a board and running through the woods with the camera or attaching it to his arm, just doing crazy shit like in a boat just to get those low angles. Of course, I'm referencing when you see the spirit running through at the very end where you see, spoiler alert, when you see the evil come back to get Ash, when you see it bust through all the wood and make its way through the house and eventually knock down the front door and grab Ash, and then we cut to black. That was Sam Raimi on a bike. He had put his camera on a bike, mounted it, and rode a bike through the fucking cabin and knocked everything down. I thought that was amazing.
I love that stuff.
That's what really drew me to this film. When I saw it initially, I had seen Army of Darkness first. My aunt and uncle introduced me to Army of Darkness when it came out on home video. So I saw it very soon after its release, probably 92. I think Army of Darkness came out in 91. Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, there's other movies. You don't need to see them because it's recapped. And then this is fun. So Army of Darkness, which we'll talk about later, but just to kind of wrap this around, was like a sword and sorcery movie with there were some demons in it, but it wasn't horror. So then I went and I found Evil Dead 2 because they said, oh, well, you need to watch Evil Dead 2. That's the precursor to the Army of Darkness. And they said Evil Dead 2 is just a remake of Evil Dead, so you don't really need to watch Evil Dead. So I watched Evil Dead 2 and I loved it. Evil Dead 2 was my favorite. And then finally I went to the video theater across the street from where I used to live, and I found Evil Dead 1. It was always rented out, and it was the shittiest copy of Evil Dead 1. Like, it had been rented 1,000 times. I think that added to the mystique of it. It was all I had to adjust the tracking every 2 fucking minutes. Remember that, kids? Well, now that VHS is back and you get all these VHS files and it's cool to tapes again. Welcome back to adjusting tracking. But yeah, that was one of the major things. So I saw the most beat up ass copy of Evil Dead that there is. So I loved it. So it looked like somebody had filmed it in a basement, which is what happened. But it was very of the mood of Evil Dead.
Yeah. Oh, so you went kind of backwards with it. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I watched them backwards, actually. I started with Army of Darkness, then watched Evil Dead 2, and then finally watched Evil Dead. So I saw in reverse how it had kind of been, I don't want to say watered down, but comedy and action had took the front seat in Army of Darkness. And then Evil Dead 2 was, I think, the masterstroke because it was a nice combination of the great visceral horror of Evil Dead 1 and the cheesy over-the-topness of Army of Darkness. I think that is the crux. I think that's Sam Raimi at his best. That being said, I do love Evil Dead 1. I think as it stands alone on its own is a great film. I don't think Evil Dead needs to be part of a series. I think you could just, here's Evil Dead, it stands on its own and it's a hell of a film. And I think they kind of, when they went back to it, they didn't have the rights to their own movie. So they sold off the rights for Evil Dead 1 and then went to make a sequel. They kind of had to do a truncated remake in the front of Evil Dead 2. But Evil Dead 1, as it lives and breathes on the screen, is one of my favorite horror movies. Like I said, Evil Dead is my favorite horror franchise. I would say Evil Dead 2 is my favorite just because of the tone, but I think Evil Dead is one of the best horror films ever made. I mean, for the amount of money that went into it, and everybody just gave their all. You have, like I said before, Tom Sullivan with just the end scene of Ash getting the book and then throwing it in the fire with the necklace that he gives Linda, and then the two, Scotty Demon and Scotty, and then the Cheryl Demon coming after him, and then just exploding with and I always love that it's not, like I said, there's no real intended comedy in this one, but the blood just shoots all over his face and the viscera just explodes all over him. Yeah. I can't say that enough. It's he wanted to make Bruce Campbell as miserable as possible during the shooting to elicit a real response of horror.
Yeah. He looks so beat down by the end. Yeah. He did a good job.
Because he was getting heckled by Sam Raimi. He had injured his ankle and Sam kept poking it with the stick, and he was trying to elicit the response of horror and annoyance and terror. I think everybody, even though the acting, I don't want to say it was cheesy, the acting was what it was. It was, young actors, but I thought the acting was done well.
I've seen worse.
Absolutely. Little known fact, Joel Cohen kind of worked with Sam Raimi. They've always been friends, the Coen brothers and Sam Raimi. They kind of came up together. For those of you who don't know the Coen brothers, come on. But obviously, Big Lebowski, Blood Simple, you can name them all. But those are my two favorite off the top of my head. Raising Arizona, come on. But Joel Cohen edited the shed sequence in this movie. So they took it to the Coen brothers and they kind of gave their rub on it. And they did with the second. They've always been involved in some way helping Sam Raimi. And Sam Raimi the same. He always helps out the Coens or gives them the rub. So I think that's cool that they have a professional friendship that's lasted through decades and started out when they were both essentially just aspiring filmmakers.
Yeah, it's kind of a side note, but I feel like it doesn't happen as often now, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, back pretty much from when cinema really took off up into it seems like it kind of ended in the late 80s, but it seems like everybody kind of knew each other somehow. A lot of filmmakers that became really great came up together somehow. They were around the same age. Somehow they knew each other. They helped each other on things when they were young filmmakers. And I feel like you don't see that as much now. And I don't know if it's me just not seeing it or if it's because it's much easier to make a film now in the sense that the technology is there and anybody can pick it up and give it a shot. And back then it was a little harder to just give it a shot, I don't know. Or maybe I'm just wrong and I don't see the connections, but it just seems like everybody knew each other back then. And it would kind of make sense because resources were a little harder to get a hold of and people, things like that in the industry.
I think there's a few different things. I think back then you really were, I don't want to say an outcast, but you were outside the normal realms of reality when you were going to make a splatter film or, a high art crazy. I mean, high art in the sense it's not high art in the sense of he was trying to outsmart everybody, but high art in the sense of really creative, really innovative, and original. And I think that breeds a certain type of person, and I think those people find each other. They do now on the internet, but I think nowadays people like us, they do podcasts or they do YouTube channels or they do that. I don't think as many people have just that outlet that are filmmakers. And I know there's tons of great indie filmmakers out there. I'm not saying that, but I think back then it wasn't as generally accepted as it is now.
The circles were smaller and it wasn't accepted. A lot of the people with similar mindsets and creativity just kind of got together, heard of each other somehow,
and kind of raised each other up, built teams.
Helped each other out and things like that. It wasn't as competitive, maybe.
Right. And once again, you would have someone on today shoot a short and put it on YouTube and whatever, Vimeo, and start Kickstarter. Sam Raimi and the guys didn't have any of that. Rob Tapert, all those guys, they had to go, hat in hand around with their little self-made movie of Within the Woods and say, this is our proof of concept film. We want to make this on a bigger scale. And they did. And they did that for each movie. Each movie that they do got a bigger budget, and got a bigger release. And it doesn't happen without the success of Evil Dead, one of the first trumpeters besides the Coen brothers. Obviously, they weren't the Coen brothers at the time, but like I said, just as spiritual advisors and really getting their hands dirty and helping raise RAIMI up as he helped them where he could, was Stephen King. And they put his quote right on the movie poster. It's when Stephen King came out and gives your movie the rub. That's high praise, especially in the 80s. That quote being the most ferociously original horror film of the year, Stephen King. And he's credited as author of Carrie and The Shining. So, that's Stephen King and Stephen King never disappoints, but that's Stephen King in his prime right there, giving you the rub.
You can impress him, you're in good shape.
I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And at this time, this is right before Stephen King and George Romero were going to go on and make creep shows. So it's like everybody's interpollinating, like you said back then. Mm-hmm. There's a really cool picture out there, and if we can find it, we should share it, of a young Sam Raimi at Cannes with, I believe it's at Cannes, with George Romero.
Yeah. Was that before he made this?
I think it's when they were shipping. I think they were at a film festival. I think it's Cannes. Don't quote me on that. Okay. But I think it's when he was shipping Evil Dead around. Yeah.
I've seen the picture. He looks so young. I don't know. I'm just so impressed. He looks like he's in high school or something in the picture, but George was also a very tall guy. So that probably makes him look smaller, right?
Yeah. George makes everybody look small. Mm-hmm. There's a great documentary by Tom Sullivan out there that documents exactly what he did and how he pretty much made chicken salad out of chicken shit and made everything look so great. He was doing this in high school. He went to high school with these guys, and he was fucking around with special effects then. And he was just so resourceful. And they didn't have, there was, no Tom Savini. There was no Greg Nicotero. And even if there was, they're not going to help out Sam Raimi, but he wasn't anybody at the time. Without a huge budget, he had to rely on what he had. And Tom Sullivan was a godsend, because if you look at these shots, it could look really cheesy if you have terrible special effects, but he nailed it. The blood looked great. The gore at the end, when the stop motion animation at the very end, one of my favorite scenes, where I go back to Ash throwing the Necronomicon stop motion with its tongue lashing out and it getting burned alive. And then Scotty and Cheryl just turning to pieces and oatmeal and bugs and all this goopy, terrible shit. When I first saw that as a kid, and with the hands ripping out, like the demon hands ripping out and kind of ripping the Deadites apart, melting them down to skeletons. I thought that fucked me up, because I had seen Army of Darkness and it's very slapsticky still. I mean, it's like, tongue in cheek, but it's like, for some reason, even though it's quote unquote lower budget, I thought these effects were just as effective, and I thought they still resonated with me as horrifying.
I think so too.
When the scene where Bruce gouges out Scotty's eyes and he just screams.
Yeah, it's so nauseating.
Yeah, and pulling the Kandarian dagger out and the blood shooting out. I can't put over the special effects in this film enough. I think it really makes it. And that combined with the innovative scenes, like you said, I thought everyone was great. I think, obviously, Bruce Campbell by the end came out a made man. Like you said, Ashley Williams was kind of a chump in the beginning and then really came into his own at the end. Not as a hero, but he transformed into a good final guy, and then is sucked away by the evil, never to be seen again until Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. Kind of touched on a little bit of everything. Is there anything that you would love to touch on about the Evil Dead or Within the Woods? Any final thoughts that you have?
Well, with Evil Dead, like I said, I always go a couple years without watching it, and I don't know why, but I always forget or take for granted how freaking good it is. Also, just like I said, thinking about the fact that it was made in 1980. Look at other things that were made in the late 70s and early 80s to compare. There's some good ones, but I don't know. It's so ahead of its time, and I'm always reminded of that when I watch it.
Well, yeah, at this budget.
Well, yeah. And I wanted to say that the effects, the effects may look dated a little bit at this point, but I still think they're so effective and they're so gross. And I think maybe it's just me, but I've formed this like love-hate relationship between the foamy, milky, like rotten food, like rotten ranch dip or something look to some of these things. And I feel like you don't see that anywhere anymore. Or like in some of the Italian stuff where it's, instead of being like blood, it's like foamy pink, I don't know, something that would come out of like a cyst.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I feel like I can smell the gore, if that makes sense, when I see this type of effect. And that, it grosses me out, but I also love it. So
absolutely. Yeah. Films like melt movies, like Street Trash.
Yeah.
Or, you don't really, I mean, they're out there.
I've grown to really like them.
And the thing is, you can do a very terrible melt movie and it can look like shit. Or to make that effective, you're right, to make that look effective, like something like a Fulci or a Dario Argento or, you know, anybody like that. And to have I know exactly what you're talking about, like the very visceral looking melting gore.
It's just different.
It is different. And yeah, Tom Sullivan nailed it. And like I said, he was just right out of high school when they made this film. So I think hats off to him. I can't say enough good things about him.
I agree.
Also, the fact that the poor actors that played the Deadites had to wear those milk white contact lenses that you can't see shit out of.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like they're literally kicking around in the dark, not in the dark, but kicking around blind, you know, swinging and attacking. So it's just funny that nobody got hurt. I mean, people, I'm sure they got, you know, they did get bumps and scrapes and bruises. Like I said, Bruce Campbell hurt his ankle, but the fact that nobody died while making this thing. There is a bit of trivia that when Ash goes to the famous chainsaw scene in the shed, the first chainsaw scene from this movie, where he locks up Linda and he's getting ready to cut her up with the chainsaw. Well, legit, that was a real chainsaw. And like he was putting it like really, Bruce Campbell was putting it like super close to Betsy Baker's chest. And they say in the movie, you can see like her pulse quickening in her neck because she's like, holy shit, is he going to fucking cut me open with this chainsaw? And I'm like, it's like, God. That's what you had to do. That's guerrilla filmmaking. Obviously, Bruce Campbell would never do that, but you know. No. A few things, a few final notes. Sam Raimi did all the voiceovers, the join us. Like, I love that. I think it could have came off real cheesy, but I love his join us. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I love Cheryl's taunting. You're not going to leave me here, Ash, are you? Are you, Ash? Like, that's all. It wasn't that cheesy, but like, I love.
Like I said, I love her cheerleading from the like basement half the time. She's just like poking out, like cheerleading about everything that's going on until she eventually gets out. I love it.
Yeah, Ellen Sandweiss was great. I just love like when they find out she's initially possessed and she turns around and she like floats up and then she's just like, you will die. And then just like a hard stop. And then like, and then like, it was just like really funny. Like the delivery on that. There's so many great little things. Obviously, we can't wrap up the episode without talking about the tree scene. As a woman, I want to give you the floor for this. How did you feel? How did you feel about it when you initially saw it? When you remembered? Because you said the first time you didn't remember. I don't know how you could forget that. I think you were high.
Oh man, I must have been.
But I want to know how you felt originally when you saw it. How you feel in 2021, 40 years later. Not for you, but 40 years later for this film. How this hits you, and what do you think the repercussions of that scene in today's society? You don't have to go that deep. Just tell me your opinion.
I always thought it just looked really painful. It made me cringe a lot. I just imagine the type of damage that's doing, and that's about all I want to imagine, really. I was pretty like the first time I remember that scene. It's pretty awful. And I was kind of surprised they went there. Like, we're just going to have her be, like, assaulted by trees in the worst way you can imagine. Yes, we said trees. The worst kind of wood. It's not what you want. So, I don't know. It just looked painful and horrible. And that's how she gets possessed, isn't it?
That is how she gets possessed, by tree rape.
They planted the demon inside of her.
They planted the seed. Literally.
They planted the seed. Oh, God. Yeah, as for all the rest of the questions, I feel like, I don't know. I don't have anything like crazy to say about it. I mean, I'm pretty chill about that stuff. So
You're pretty chill about tree rape?
Yeah, I'm pretty chill about it, on the record.
That's a t-shirt.
Yeah. Fan made. Yeah, no, I mean, I feel the same way about it now every time I rewatch it that I did then. It's just kind of like, ouch, holy shit. That looks like probably the worst thing. I'd rather have my hand chopped off, I think.
Yeah.
I'd rather have anything else that happened to the movie happen to me. Other than maybe the eyes. I don't know. That's hard. That's a hard choice. But no, I mean, I'm pretty chill about that stuff in general. I don't find it offensive anything, if that's what you're asking. But yeah, I don't know. I think it works for the movie. I don't think they're trying to make a statement out of it or anything, but I think they're trying to be shocking.
I think so too. Sam Raimi went on to say later he regretted putting that in. Ellen Samwise didn't know that was coming. She said that obviously it was something they strategically shot. She was obviously acting for the trees, and they shot that in reverse, so that's why it looked like the branches grabbed onto her. But she said that she didn't see that until she saw the final cut of the film, so it's obviously an insert shot of that, of the tree penetrating, which I thought was really hard to watch too. Even as a young kid, I'm like, I know there's a lot of quote unquote gore hounds that get off on that stuff. Not me. Like, I think I like gore, like I said, and I like
dirty.
It was just a low blow, and that might be a reason why it's not my favorite movie of the trilogy. And I'm not knocking it for that. I think it makes it more horrific. It's not fun to celebrate tree rape. So I actually a little more perturbed by it than you are. It sounds like you seem
it sounds like it. Yeah. No, I mean, they are demons, and I'm sure they could think of even worse things to do. So
it is true. They are Kandarian demons.
They're demons after all, guys.
You guys did read from the Book of the Dead, and even though you knew better, or anybody with common sense would have known better, you brought them back. Not saying that. Yeah, Cheryl did know. That's what's sad too. Is like she was the one that said, "Let's get the fuck out of here," and then the worst things happened to her, just subjectively.
Oh, I know.
The worst things happen to her, and then she dies. The worst things happen to Ash because he has to live through all that, and then he, quote unquote, question mark lives at the end.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes from the film is when Ash runs back into the cabin and he shuts the door, slams the door behind him when he's coming in from the woods. And it's a low angle shot of Bruce Campbell's face, but it's like shrouded in shadow. It's a very iconic shot, and it's only for a few seconds. And actually they used the shots in Donnie Darko too, when they're at the theater, they're watching Evil Dead. Mm-hmm. And that shot, not Donnie Darko. It might be in Donnie Darko. It is definitely in Nightmare on Elm Street as well. So in Nightmare on Elm Street, when she's watching Evil Dead, that scene is on her Nancy's TV. So that's one of my favorite shots. I just think iconically it's framed well, it's lit well, and it's just super striking and cool. I thought they could have used that more in marketing and merchandising. So I'd love to see like a t-shirt with like that image on it, or something like a poster with that image on it. Out of all the billions of releases they have, I just think that's a really cool screen cap. That's one of my favorite scenes.
Next release.
Maybe. They just did a 4K release, so when they do another 4K release, maybe they can put that on there.
Yeah.
And Within the Woods, for Christ's sakes.
I know.
Going back to Nightmare on Elm Street, in the very opening of Evil Dead, when they're downstairs and they're discovering the Necronomicon and the reel that plays the warning, and it's Dr. Noby's warning about the Book of the Dead and all that nonsense. if you look in the background on the tool shed, you'll see a ripped up picture of The Hills Have Eyes, which was kind of a nod, which is an ode and a nod. I just invented it here. That was a node to Wes Craven. Or some people read it as they were taking the piss out of Wes Craven, because in the original Hills Have Eyes, there's a picture of a shark, which was, I think it was torn up. I have to go back and rewatch it, but which was a reference to him taking the piss out of Steven Spielberg. And then later on in Evil Dead 2, in the scene with Ash and the work shed, you can see Freddy Krueger's glove in the work shed too, in the tool shed.
I always love that stuff. Little Easter eggs.
Yeah, so it was kind of a back and forth. Yeah, and then way later on in Jason Goes to Hell, you can see the Necronomicon and Kandarian dagger in the climax of the film on the table. And that was because Greg Nicotero worked on Evil Dead 2 and also worked on Jason Goes to Hell, Final Friday.
So many connections.
Yeah, so it comes full circle. You have connections with the Coen brothers, connections with George Romero, connections with Stephen King, connections with Nicotero. It's great. Like, Sam Raimi is obviously Sam Raimi is lauded as a great filmmaker. I mean, his resume speaks for itself. My favorite will always be the Evil Dead films. That's why we're talking about them here. That's why we're celebrating the 40th anniversary. That's why we're doing 4 episodes. And like I said, we're not going to do the analytical beat by beat. This is all free jazz, baby. But it's because something I love. I fucking love Evil Dead. My life wouldn't be the same without it. And like I said, my journey started with Army of Darkness, and I went backwards through time, much like Ash did. So I feel that's appropriate. I just got to say thank you, Mr. Raimi. Thank you for making an awesome series of films and continuing. And I'm really jazzed for Multiverse of Madness, and maybe this will age poorly and I'll hate it, but I think without Evil Dead, you don't get modern horror cinema the way it is today. I think Evil Dead is a genre-changing film, much like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and so many others, Blair Witch Project. There are certain films that just hit certain ways, and I don't know if Evil Dead is looked at that way. I know it has a ton of fans, but I don't know if it's considered genre changing, because so many great things came out in the 80s, but Evil Dead, I think, raised the bar. And not necessarily in just gore, not necessarily in horror, but like you said, inventiveness, innovation, and originality, and friendship. Like, it was a bunch of friends that made this movie. Yeah. And that's my final thought on Evil Dead. Brittany?
Cheers to that.
Well, you heard it here. That's Evil Dead Within the Woods episode. We're going to be doing 4 episodes of these. Hopefully you love them. If you love them, let us know. If you hate them, let us know. But this is a little more freeform than our normal reviews of films. It's just us celebrating Evil Dead. There's plenty of great, there's probably great documentaries and behind the scenes and all kinds of, even check out James A. Janice. He's got a kill count on all 3 of the movies. I believe he probably did the remake too, but this is my love letter to Evil Dead. Nothing beats it. I could watch it 100 times. Brittany and I, for years, I did not seen it on the big screen, and they did a re-release, and Brittany and I saw it at the drive-in, which was cool because that was the first time I've ever seen Evil Dead at the drive-in. And then the next day I went out to the Mahoning drive-in. I believe, it was that weekend I went out to the Mahoning drive-in and then saw Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. So I got to see all 3 on the big screen within the same week, which I had been trying to do for years. Bruce Campbell was out there, and I got to get my poster from the Mahoning autograph, so I was really excited for that. Evil Dead films are my favorite, hands down. I think if I have to go 1, it's Evil Dead, and then 1A is Dawn of the Dead and the Romero films. So Evil Dead was my gateway to loving horror.
I love that. Yeah, I came into it late, but obviously, and apparently blasted the first time. but I definitely I love them, and I have a lot more to say about it in our next episode.
All right. This has been episode 1 of The Evil Dead 4 for 40, Reliving the Evil Dead. I am Mr. Wills.
And I'm Brittany.
And this is Signals from Pittsburgh, signing off. Don't read any old Kandarian literature in the meantime. Stay away from the Necronomicon. Be safe out there in podcast land. Join us.